Om Namo Jayam Vishnupad Paramahamsa Parirajakacharya Stotra Stat Shri Shri His Divine Grace A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Srila Prabhupada Ki Ananta Koti Vaishnavrinda Ki Jai Gaur Premanande Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya Narayanam Namaskritya Naram Chaiva Narottamam Devim Saraswatim Vyasam Tato Jayamudhirayed Nashtaprayasta Badreshu Nityam Bhagavata Sevaya Bhagavati Utamash Loke Bhaktir Bhavati Naishtaki. Today we are reading this beautiful Srimad Bhagavatam. We're almost done with Dhruva Charita. As a matter of fact, I think we are done with Dhruva Charita. We're in chapter 12. Dhruva Maharaj goes back to Godhead. And yeah, we're on the same verse here. And we're on text 39. So yesterday we were on text 38 and it concluded, in this way, the fully conscious, Krishna conscious Dhruva Maharaj, the exalted son of Maharaj Uttanapad, attained the summit of the three statuses of planetary systems. Now today we're on text 39. Gambhira Vego Nimisham. Gambhira Vego Nimisham. Can someone get a chair for Prabhu? Prabhu, you need a chair? Oh, okay. Gambhira Vego Nimisham Jyotisham Chakramahitam Jyotisham Chakramahitam Jyotisham Chakramahitam Yasmin Brahmati Kauravya Yasmin Brahmati Kauravya Yasmin Brahmati Kauravya Medhyam eva gavam ganaha Medhyam eva gavam ganaha Medhyam eva gavam ganaha. Gambhira Vego Nimisham Utisham Chakranathidam Asmin Chakrakoravya Medhyamiva Gavam Ganaha Gambhira Vego Nimisham Utisham Chakramahitam Yasmin Brahmati Kauravya Medhyamiva Gavam Ganaha Gambhira Vego Nimisham Jyotisham Chakramahitam Yasmin Brahmati Kauravya Medhyamiva Gavam Ganaha Gambhira Vegaha, with great force and speed. Animesham, unceasingly. Jyotisham, of luminaries. Chakram, sphere. Ahitam, connected. Yasmin, around which Brahmati, in circles. Kauravya, O Vidura. Medhyam, a central pole. Eva, as. Gavam, of bulls. Garnaha, a herd. Sorry, Matadi, did you want to chant the shloka? Would you like to chant? Okay. So we'll go to the translation then. Saint Maitreya continued, "My dear Vidura, a descendant of Kuru, as a herd of bulls circumambulates a central pole on the right side, all luminaries within the universal sky unceasingly circumambulate the abode of Dhruva Maharaj with great force and speed." Please repeat. Saint Maitreya continued, "My dear Vidura, descendant of Kuru, as a herd of bulls circumambulates a central pole on their right side, all the luminaries within the universal sky unceasingly circumambulate the abode of Dhruva Maharaj with great force and speed." Purport. Each and every planet within the universe travels at a very high speed. From a statement in Srimad Bhagavatam, it is understood that even the sun travels 16,000 miles in a second. And from Brahma Samhita, we understand from the shloka beginning, Yach Chakshurisa Savita Sakala Grahanam, that the sun is considered to be the eye of the Supreme Personality of Godhead, Govinda, and it also has a specific orbit within which it circles. Similarly, all our other planets have their specific orbits, but together all of them encircle the pole star, or Dhruva Loka, where Dhruva Maharaj is situated at the summit of the three worlds. We can only imagine how highly exalted the actual position of a devotee is, and certainly we cannot even conceive of how exalted is the position of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Om Jnana Timirandasya Ananjana Chalakshaya Chakshurun Militam Yena Tasmai Shri Guruve Namaha Shri Chaitanya Mano Bhishtam Stapitam Yena Bhutale Swayam Rupa Kadamahyam Tadati Swapadantikam Vandeham Shri Guru Shri Yuta Padakamalam Shri Gurun Vaishnavamscha Shri Rupam Sakrajatam Sahagana Laganatam Vitam Tam Sajivam Sadvaitam Savadutam Parijana Sahitam Krishna Chaitanya Devam Shri Radha Krishna Padan Sagana Lalita Shri Vishakan Vitamscha He Krishna Karuna Sindhu Dinabandho Jagatpate Gopisha Gopika Kanta Radha Kanta Namostute Tapta Kanchana Gourangi Radhe Vrindavaneshwari Rishabhanu Sutadevi Pranamami Hari Kriye. Jai Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhar Shri Vasari Gaur Bhakta Vrinda. Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare Vanchakalpa Turubhyascha Kripa Sindhubhyevacha Patitanam Pavnebhyo Vaishnavebhyo Namo Namaha Mukam Karoti Vachalam Pangum Langayate Girim Yat Kripatamaham Vande Shri Gurun Dinataranam Paramananda Madhavam Shri Chaitanya Ishwaram Hari Om Tat Sat. Okay, so today is both Mokshad Ekadasi. Let me look at my calendar. It's Mokshad Ekadasi, but it's also Trispirsha Mahadwadasi. Sometimes because the solar days and the lunar days are not exactly the same, then sometimes you can have 2 lunar days within 1 solar day, or sometimes you can have 2 solar days within 1 lunar day, and you might skip. So it just depends on what's happening between the relationship between the moon and the sun. And so today it just happens that somehow it's both tithis and I'm not an exact pundit in these things. But the most important thing is that it's Ekadasi, so we're fasting. It's the day of the Lord. It's said that, what is it? You need to look at that. Madhava Titi Bhakti Janani. So Madhava, Krishna. Titi, do you know what Titi means? It means lunar. It could mean just time, but it means like lunar date or just like the date or day. So Madhava Titi, on Madhava's days, Bhakti Janani. Bhakti, we know what that means, right? Devotional service. Janani means mother. So this Bhaktivinoda Thakur is giving us, there's a special bhajan that many times is sung on Ekadashi. What is the name of that bhajan? In the beginning? Shuddha Bhakata Charana Renu. I'm trying to find it in this app. Here he goes. Bhajana Anukula. So the dust coming from the lotus feet of the pure devotees is Bhajana Anukul. Who knows what Bhajana Anukul means? Who knows what surrender means? Yeah, Sharanagati has 6 limbs. Yeah, so let's go through the 6 limbs. You've ever heard of this, Michael? Okay, you might want to write it down. It's probably the most important thing to know. So, okay, let's first ask the question: What is the Gita in one word? Surrender. Like the ultimate conclusion of the Gita is Sarva Dharma Prityajya Mamekam Sharanam Vraja Ham Tvam Sarva Papebhyo Mokshishyami Masujaha. That if you surrender to Krishna, that's the main decision that you should always be making. And that by making that decision, Krishna will figure out all the other little things that may seem to go wrong because you made that decision. He'll deal with all of it. And then we shouldn't worry. Masujaha. So the whole point of the Gita is to surrender. So we're now reading the Bhagavatam. The Bhagavatam is showing us all these kinds of devotees that are surrendering to Krishna and what's happening with them and how he's solving their problem. And ultimately it shows the most wonderful devotees in Vrindavan, how they surrender to Krishna, which is par excellence. And so we can get to that level of par excellence. Krishna himself comes as Lord Chaitanya, and his pastimes are showing what the residents of Vrindavan would be doing if they came to modern times, or if they came to earth, not just for Krishna's pastimes, but for spreading Krishna's pastimes. And also Krishna had some internal reasons. And therefore we had some great sages like Krishnadas Kaviraj and the 6 Goswamis, and all the way down to Srila Prabhupada, and they brought us the Chaitanya Charitamrita, which is to help us by understanding Krishna's pastimes, understanding Lord Chaitanya's pastimes, to help us also get there. And so, back to the idea of surrender. Surrender is 6-fold. And you could probably write unlimited books on surrender, and it's an amazing topic to meditate on. But in short, the first thing, like Prabhuji was saying, is you accept what is favorable for devotional service. Let's see. Sorry, this is just coming on the top of my head talking about this, but it's important. So I didn't have the exact shloka prepared, although I know where to find it. Although I'm having a little hard time finding it. Anukulyasya sankalpanam pratikulyasya varjanam. Here it is. Okay, so the first principle is anukulyasya sankalpa. Sankalpa means you decide to do something. And it means you should decide to do whatever is favorable or anything that helps us in devotional service. That's why we come to the morning program. That's why we wake up early. That's why we take prasadam. That's why we smell the Lord's flowers that are offered to Him. That's why we associate with devotees. There's so many things that we accept that are help us in our devotional service. And one of the most important things is the association with devotees. So that's why Prabhupada made ISKCON, because he wanted to make it easy for people to accept this. So that's why devotees struggled to get all the money they needed to buy this building, to maintain it, to have it, so it could be a center for favorable activities in Krishna consciousness. Now, also when we learn of something that we should do, it also implies that then there are things that we shouldn't do. Just like anyone who has a goal, there's going to be things that they want to do and things that they have to avoid if they want to reach their goal. I mean, a simple goal that most people get in their life is they'll get sick and they'll have the goal of getting better, and they'll go to the doctor, and the doctor will tell them, if you want to get better, you take this medicine and you have this diet and you avoid these things and you avoid these things. And if you follow what the doctor says, then you get better quickly. If you don't follow what the doctor says, then usually things don't happen very well. So that's the first thing. So surrender, how many points does surrender have? 6. And what is the first one, Michael? Yeah, that's so if you accept what's favorable, then that's surrender. So the second thing is pratikulyasya varjanam. That means varjanam means rejection, and pratikul is the opposite of anukul. Anukul means like following something that's good. Pratikul means against, something that's against devotional service. So if something's against devotional service, then we should reject it. That's why we don't eat meat. That's why we don't associate with non-devotees. That's why we don't read so many just karmi books. That's why we follow the 4 regular principles. Because those things will then diminish our devotional service and make it really hard to surrender. Then going down, so that's the first 2 points. Accepting and rejecting. Accepting what's favorable, rejecting what's unfavorable. Then there's Rakshishyaititi Vishvaso, that Krishna, having the Vishvas, having like a lot of faith, that Krishna is actually our protector. Krishna is saying, you surrender to me, then I'll protect you. So we actually have faith in that, and that's good. Prabhupada one time was asked, I think by Hari Vilas, if you watch the following Srila Prabhupada, he says this, not our Hari Vilas, the devotee we all know and love here that's giving the Bhakti Shastri course, but of course Prabhupada's disciple Hari Vilas. And I think he asked Prabhupada, what does surrender mean? Or heard Prabhupada explaining what does surrender mean. And Prabhupada told him, surrender means to Krishna, or what is humility actually? What is humility? But they're very related. Humility means that you understand that nothing can protect you. Your money can't protect you. Your nice clothes can't protect you. Your aristocratic family can't protect you. Your big job can't protect you. Your security guards can't protect you. Your nation can't protect you. Nothing can protect you. Not your good deeds in the past, not anything. But only the Lord can protect you. And when you actually understand that, then you'll actually be humble. The reason why most people are puffed up is because they feel like they've got complete protection. All right, no one can hurt me because now I'm invincible. Or basically something like that. And then they act irrational. If any one of us, if someone was like, okay, here, now you become invincible. Nothing can kill you. Do we think we would act very much different than the demons we've heard in the Vedas? Like, there's that story of, what is it, Bhaumasura, or the one with the hundreds of arms? Is that his name? I think. He worshipped Lord Shiva and gave him a boon to be very strong. He had like many, many arms. And he became so puffed up, he would just he's like, I can just defeat everyone in battle. Life is boring now. There's no point to living. Like, why am I so strong if I can't actually use my strength? He would beat up mountains, break down mountains. But when it came to the point of wanting a fight, Lord Shiva finally came to him. He's like, Lord Shiva, please, I just want to fight someone. And he's like, okay, this is a very foolish desire, but eventually you'll fight someone and they'll defeat you. And then eventually he got into a fight with Krishna, and that was it. He couldn't defeat Krishna. And so when someone is generally strong, they don't take shelter. But when someone is actually taking shelter of Krishna, they understand that Krishna is the only one that can give them protection. And not only that he gives protection, that was the third point. So we have accepting what's favorable, rejecting what's unfavorable, having faith that Krishna will protect us, and then go tritve varanam tata. That varanam, that we accept that Krishna is like our maintainer or our guardian. So he's already a protector, that's the third one. So he's maintaining us. Surrendering unto someone, if like Lord Ram says, when anyone surrenders unto me, then I promise that I won't let him go away from my lotus feet. I'll take care of him. So when you're actually surrendered to a proper master will maintain you and nourish you. If someone has a bunch of servants, then they're all doing hard work. The servants also eat just as good as the master. They keep their strength. They live in a nice thing. They wear nice garments just like the master. So they're completely maintained by the master to be able to serve the master. And that'll also happen with us if we actually attain the blessings and the purity and the perfection that hopefully we're all striving for. When you finally, like Dhruva Maharaj finally stepped on the plane and achieved he achieved Dhruva Loka, which is not different than Vaikuntha planets. Similarly, also sometime in the future, we'll also go to where Krishna is, and then we'll have similar nourishment as Krishna, similar clothes as Krishna. We'll be engaging in pastimes with Krishna. So all of it will be on the same level. And even now, Krishna is maintaining us. I mean, like Ram Rai Prabhu, he was saying, like, ever since he joined the temple, he never had to worry about working outside or doing anything. He just spent all his energy for Krishna, and then Krishna maintained him somehow or other. It always works. Krishna will always maintain his devotees. Then Atma Nikshepa Karpanye, the last two. We did 4, then so now we're number 5. And so that Atma Nikshepa Karpanya means, I guess Atma Nikshepa, full self-surrender. Atma Nivedana is also one of the 9 limbs of devotional service. Prabhupada explains that it means always remembering that your activities and desires are not independent. And so we're just completely dependent on Krishna with whatever we're doing, which is easy if we're living in the temple and we're just serving Krishna and doing everything for Krishna's benefit, and it's easy to maintain that surrender. And then the last one, Karpanya, that we are actually humble. Humility, when Bhakti Siddhanta Saraswati Thakur is asked, why didn't you guys have Siddha Pranali? He said, we do have Siddha Pranali, and I give everyone the Siddha Pranali mantra when I initiate them. Oh, really? What is that Siddha Pranali mantra? Trinadapi sunichena toraiva sahishnuna amanena manadena kirtaniya sadahari. So Siddha Pranali means understanding somehow the guru bestows upon the disciple the understanding of their spiritual form. And generally speaking, it's a cheap trick that sahajas use, that maybe they're, charge some money or just tell someone that's not ready for it, or they're just giving them, one time everyone got they all got Siddha Pranali together at Radhakund or something, but then they all asked each other, and they all realized that they all got the same characteristics, so they realized they had been cheated. So that's not real Siddha Pranali. Real Siddha Pranali is actually having real self-realization. We're talking about the science of self-realization. And so that comes from humility. That was all just coming from Shuddha Bhakata Charanareno Bhajana Anukula, Bhakata Seva Paramasiddhi, Prema Latikar Mula. This is the bhajan Bhaktivinoda Thakur said we should chant on, or that many devotees chant on Ekadashi. Madhava Titi Bhakti Janani. The holy days, like Ekadasi and Janmashtami, are the mother of devotion for devotees who respect them. Thank you. So going to the verse, this verse is right at the end of Dhruva's pastimes, and now we're going back into the story, because the Bhagavatam is like a narration within a narration within a narration. And so now we've finished the narration of what's happening with Dhruva, and it's going back to the level of Vidura and Maitreya. So Maitreya has continued, and he explains something about the cosmic reality, which will be expanded on. This verse is like kind of like a seed verse, I guess, for the whole fifth canto. The fifth canto has extensive verses talking about the cosmology. And right after this, then we'll hear about the Prachetas, we'll hear about King Venu, and then we'll hear about King Prithu. So that's what to look forward to in the Bhagavatam. And one important point, today is also Gita Jayanti, the appearance of the Bhagavad Gita. So after this, we'll be reading chapters from the Gita. And if you've been assigned, I'm sure Shobhamai sent you a message. And it's nice to chant the shlokas of the Gita on Gita Jayanti. Krishna says, those who study these worship me by their intelligence. And it's also said that any aparads you commit towards any of your seva, there's different kinds of aparads. One is called seva aparad. That if you just chant a chapter of Gita, you get forgiveness for those seva aparads. So we're living in close proximity to gurus, we're living in close proximity to Vaishnavas, we're living in close proximity to Radha Govinda, and all of our activities, practically speaking, are seva to them. And unfortunately, sometimes we make some mistakes in that seva. And so this is a good opportunity to get cleared from that and advance in our devotion. When talking about the cosmology of the Bhagavatam, there was a time a few years ago I tried to look very deep into it. There's a beautiful verse that Shukadev is telling Parikshit King Parikshit, Shukadev Goswami is telling King Parikshit when he's asking about the material world, and this is in the beginning of the fifth canto. And he says, "My dear king, there's no limit to the expansion of the Supreme Personality of Godhead's material energy. The material world is a transformation of the different gunas, but no one can explain it perfectly, even if they had a lifetime as long as Lord Brahma. And no one in the material world is perfect, and an imperfect person cannot describe this material universe accurately, even after continued speculation. O king, I shall nevertheless try to explain to you the principal regions, such as Bhuloka, with their names, forms, measurements, and various symptoms." So Shukadev Goswami is giving us how, from what he's heard and perhaps experienced about the universe, but giving the caveat that actually the universe is highly complex because it's coming from the Supreme Lord. And anything coming from the unlimited Supreme Lord is also unlimited and complex. Even the Supreme Lord, with his unlimited malice in the form of Ananta, is not able to reach the end of his glorification. In other words, the Lord can't even himself fathom the extent of his glories. Because as soon as he fathoms it, if he were able to fathom it, then already by that point they expand further. So this is the amazing paradoxical understanding. And I wanted to talk about the relationship of knowledge and the epistemology of how devotees know what they know and how other people try to gain knowledge. So in general, sages that we're hearing from, they understand things on a much deeper level. You know, science is a methodology to gain knowledge, and if you're trying to become a devotee, you don't have to give up any kind of thing related to science. Sometimes it may seem like that externally, but actually science is just a method. You know, described maybe in the 1700s or 1800s when it became more formulated, that essentially there's some observation about the world and someone will think about that observation and try to come up with a theory of why such data could be. And then they try to disprove that theory, or some others may try to disprove it. Some others may try to collect more data and see if that falls in line. And in this way, there's a gradual increase of knowledge from complete ignorance to, substantial theoretical knowledge, which is different than factual knowledge. So science can never really ascertain things completely factually. It can just build a working model based on whatever observations. And it's pretty good. I mean, we have computers working from this microphones working from this, whatever construction, the companies understood over years of constructing buildings that if you do it this way, it won't fall down. And if you build it with this material, so on and so forth. So this is called the ascending path of knowledge, which is accepted as one of the pramanams, or ways to gain knowledge. But then there's some problems with it, like when I like to call it science versus scientism, like as if science was like a religion. When science is usurped and twisted to include results which are extrapolated or answers which are beyond its scope, the scope of its observations, then it becomes similar to a religion where there's no kind of logic, science has our perception and our ability to gain ascending knowledge. It has a limit, and if we try to extend beyond that limit and claim that as like a fact, then that's when the problem comes. So things like, we can, they have like this, okay, so like the Big Bang. The way that Stephen Hawking understood, he was one of the first to theorize about that, is that they would see certain evidences in how the stars were redshifted and seems like everything was going away. It's okay, if everything's going away, then it means at some point there must have been, if I have like a big puddle of water, and I like smack the water, and a bunch of particles go out, and you have a slow-mo camera and take a picture of all those particles, and you just take, well after I slapped the puddle of water, you take a few pictures. You'll see one drip is like halfway between me and Amrit Sagar, and then the next one you see it like splashed and hit him. So you could say, oh, if I have a few pictures that show the water droplet go that way, I could just reverse it, and I could understand that, okay, eventually there must have been, water here, and something happened that caused the water to go there. But if you don't have the original picture, then you don't really know exactly what happened. And so sometimes science can go beyond this and say, okay, so therefore, because we know that this thing happened, or we theorize that it happened, therefore there is no God. I was like, well, hold on a second. There's nothing in the data that could really point to that, and it's extrapolating beyond its bounds. And there's many ideas that go beyond this where science tries to have a say in matters what it just simply cannot. Like another one is, materialism or physicalism, where everything can be described in terms of physics, which is a kind of funny thing to say by human beings who have so many things that can't be described by physics. Like, can you describe in terms of force and mass and electrical charges, like how you love your mother? Michael, how many grams is your love for your mother? Like, but you have it, right? It's a thing. It's not something false. And so like that, science can become scientism. So this is the ascending knowledge, and then there's descending knowledge. So sages, they can expand their consciousness and they can connect with higher beings, including the highest being, and they can realize knowledge directly. Like a kind of example, like if Jainanda's locked out of the temple room and he gets angry and he's slamming on the door, if we're just in the room and someone doesn't know anything, they can hear the knocking of the door, they can measure it with the decibel reader, they can, use psychoacoustic knowledge and say that it's like coming from this direction and it's originating from here. And there's so many ways we can sophisticatedly have information about the knocking. But then if you ask me, I said, oh, someone please just unlock the door. That's Jayananda knocking. And he's knocking because he's mad, because he wants to come in here and hear Bhagavatam class, and he's been locked out. So that's an example of descending knowledge, because I know Jayananda, and I could call. He calls me on the phone, and he just told me. He told me he was mad. That's why he wants to get let in. And so that's kind of the difference between descending and ascending knowledge. Descending knowledge can give you a complete picture, full with the who and the why. Where ascending knowledge is. It can give you sophisticated information, but it's just on a different, lower quality. And so this is where Bhagavatam is coming from. This is what Vyasadeva did. He expanded his consciousness and his samadhi. He saw Krishna and Maya, meaning he saw everything. And he also was empowered by the Lord to explain what he saw. And so the universe isn't really easy to understand, as we heard in that shloka. But Krishna, with his flute, he empowered Brahma to understand how to create, or at least expand, secondarily create Sarga and Visarga. And Vyasadeva is explaining what this is happening, what is happening, what is happening when. And interestingly enough, if you take the story of our modern ascending knowledge of when and how the universe was created, and when and how the solar system were created, and many other things, and you see, like, you ask, for example, like someone from the 1800s, when was the solar system created and when will it be destroyed? Or when was the universe created? They have so many different answers, and then over time, with the ascending knowledge, they slowly came to the current values that are accepted. Does anyone know how old people have tried to ascertain how old the solar system is, or how old the universe is? Do you guys remember? Yeah, 13 to 14 billion years is the age that basically they just did their calculations of the same way that they thought of the Big Bang, and then they found, okay, if you just bring everything back to the Big Bang and then come back to now, how much time would that actually elapse for all those things to happen? And similarly, there's also knowledge about the solar system coming into being, which is about 4 billion years. And now scientists also understand that in a certain amount of time, due to what they've theorized how the sun is generating energy, they theorize also how the solar system will be destroyed. Essentially, the sun will become a red giant and it'll become uninhabitable. And so therefore, Elon Musk is saying we should go to Mars and eventually become a multi-solar system, species. Otherwise, we'll definitely go extinct before that. But then if you look, so this was just all very recently. These ages, especially, they've been getting narrower and narrower, and it's been, there's a book written by my friend who documents like how the basically story of how the different scientists got to the number where we're at now, and it's getting more and more precise with more, the way that it works. Like I was saying before, you have some data and you try to figure out why the data would look that way, and you keep making different models in your head. And so through all this happening, it slowly coalesces on a certain number. Well, then when you know it, that Vyasadeva, just sitting in meditation in some cave perhaps, with no modern technology, no Hubble telescope, no super advanced computers to process all the data, and hundreds of people over many generations, hundreds and thousands, many generations, coming up with different theories and slowly getting into it. Just explaining the lifetime of Lord Brahma and what Lord Brahma is doing. You look at between when Lord Brahma created the universe and up till now, it's actually been 13 billion years. And you can calculate, my friends in the book, they calculated, and it's exactly the same number that is presented, or very similar. And that number has been sitting there for 5,000 years, or since whenever the Puranas came, around that time. And you look similarly, the number of when the solar system came into being, it's been sitting at the same number, even though until like 1930s, 1940s, scientists didn't even know, they didn't have many good theories of how the solar system came to be until they came up with there's a bunch of matter and it increases, and then it forms into a ball, and then it gets more and more, and then finally it starts to do fusion and becomes a star. And that's how solar systems are formed. And then even later, once after understanding that better, then they understood how the solar system will actually end. Then if you look in the Vayu Purana, it explains how actually the sun will, Vayu Purana from 5,000 years ago, and even if you say, did someone interpolate that? And you can look at translations of the Vayu Purana from before the 1900s, and it has the same information. And so it's interesting that Vyasadeva can do this. I mean, ultimately, we don't necessarily care about different numbers and measurements. Like Sadaputta, a very famous scientist, was saying how some of these measurements are not so important, but the most important measurement is, how close is our hearts to God? I mean, so how are we increasing our love for Krishna? And so the Bhagavatam, that's the whole point of the Bhagavatam, actually, is to show how devotees were supposed to always remember God. I mean, it's describing different relationships between all the different planes of existence. And in doing so, sometimes it's hard to correlate with our current perception. But we should understand that our current perception is extremely limited, and try to humble ourselves before the wisdom of someone greater. I mean, even the wisdom coming from the scientists, there's only a few scientists who are actually making those discoveries and trying to prove them. More or less everyone is, unless we've gone through and done all the scientific studies, or the people that accept them have done all the scientific studies, they're accepting them on faith. And so similarly, the Vedic science, the science of self-realization, the science that Vyasadeva and the great rishis have gone through, they've done their supreme experimentation where their sadhana has led them to increase their love of Godhead, and that, Krishna, you know everything. And so that's ultimately the point. It's not what you know, it's who you know. So, whether we know that it's, this much distance to this planet, I mean, right now it doesn't matter. None of our spaceships can even fly that far. And, when Dhruva Maharaj, he's getting on a piece of technology that can actually do it. When we were just reading probably last week, and he's getting on the special spiritual vimana. So it wouldn't matter if someone could speculate for billions and trillions of years. If they don't understand the personal nature of reality, they're never going to be able to have any kind of technology like that. And how much easier would it be if the scientist was actually just able to connect with some higher conscious being and more or less just download the information? And even in our times, there's many examples of mathematicians or different scientists that they didn't know how to solve a problem, and then they prayed or they slept on it or something happened, and then the information was revealed to them. So if that's something that can happen, then that's ultimately the best way to get knowledge. Just like if Jayananda calls me, then I can fully understand the situation of what's happening. So there's a lot to be discussed, and that's one of the main points of my friend's book. It's called Big Bang and the Sages, and it's extremely interesting, extremely well written, and I recommend if anyone's reading the Bhagavatam, especially in the 5th canto, and wants to try to understand it better, this will give them a good point of view, a good point of reference. We have about a minute or two left, and I was just wondering if there's any questions or comments. Mike can hold the mic. We don't want to get it greasy. Yeah.
Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna. A little louder.
Thank you, Prabhu. And more of a comment, I liked the point how you were making about how Krishna, when we fully surrender to him, he fully protects us and gives us what we need. And that includes knowledge, which we were talking about. Krishna is knowledge, and so he'll reveal that knowledge to us if we need to know it. I remember Prabhupada saying something like that what you need to know to do your service, Krishna will give you.
Yeah, someone asked him, trying to challenge him, Swamiji, you know everything, yes? He's like, yes. Okay, well then how many windows are in the Empire State Building? Trying to like trip him up. He's like, I know whatever Krishna needs me to know. So he may not know the exact number of windows in the skyscraper, but that doesn't really matter. He can know how his disciple's feeling and how to say the exact words to cultivate that disciple's mood closer to Krishna. Like, there's so many instances of Prabhupada essentially just seeing right through a devotee and reading not only their mind but reading their heart like completely and able to specifically guide them. And anyone connected with Krishna, acting as guru, can do that. And that's one sign that the process is working, is that they're actually, because they're connected with Super Soul, that they can do that. So also another thing, we don't want too much knowledge. Too much knowledge is also not good. We're not trying to just gain knowledge for knowledge's sake. We're gaining knowledge. There's a purpose behind gaining knowledge, in other words. Too much knowledge can be a bad thing. So Krishna protects us in all parts, also part of his protection. He's protecting us from knowledge that will distract us. I used to think why doesn't all the devotees just get like cities, and then by showing their miracles, they'll make everyone have so much faith. But people wouldn't have faith in the actual, if that happened, people would then only want to do any kind of practice just so they could also get cities. I'm not going to lie. I mean, I probably would still do that too. That's probably an anartha that I need to get rid of. Therefore, it not happening then is something actually helpful, that we're forced to actually just get the real thing, devotional service. I mean, ultimately, all siddhis will come, but they'll come at a time when we're ready to handle that. Okay, thank you for joining the Srimad Bhagavatam class, giving me opportunity. All glories to Srila Prabhupada. All glories to the devotees. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare.